Hello, I'm Dr. Drew Bogner, President of Molloy College, and I'd like to welcome you to the Public Square 2.0. In this program, we will be bringing you some of the great faculty that currently teach at Molloy College. They will share their insights on subjects that we hope you will find both entertaining and enlightening. Our speakers today are Dr. Andrea Honigsfeld and Dr. Maria Dove. Andrea is Professor and Associate Dean as well as Director of the Doctoral Program in our Division of Education. Maria is Associate Professor and Coordinator of our Graduate Education TESOL programs, also in the Division of Education. Their research focuses on integrated instructional practices for English learners. But today they will be talking to us about collaboration. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Andrea Honigsfeld and Dr. Maria Dove.
Thank you. We like to begin many of our talks with one of our favorite sayings from George Bernard Shaw. And it goes like this: if you have an apple and I have an apple and we exchange these apples, then each of us will still have one apple.
But if I have an idea and you have an idea and we exchange these ideas, then we're each going to have two ideas. Well, many of you might have heard about 21st century skills. Often the first thought that comes to mind is technology, when in fact some of the most important aspects of 21st century skills are collaboration. And when we think about learning and teaching skills, as we often work on in our teacher education program, the 4 C's that we often talk about include critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. So today, we're going to talk about just one aspect of these 4 C's, that's collaboration.
In order to talk about collaboration, we wanted to explore a little bit of our American culture and see what type of collaborations are out there in the general population. We started to explore certain proverbs, etc., and it really spoke more about American individualism. So we have expressions such as, if you want something done right, do it yourself. Or how about pull yourself up by your own bootstraps? So we have this myth almost of the rugged individualist that is very prevalent in our own American culture. And it's also very prevalent in many of our what we call reality TV shows. So we have shows such as Survivor or Top Chef. So here we have people working in teams initially, but ultimately there's only one winner. Again, there are winners and losers. We often think of many people in our society who are those lone geniuses, such as Steve Jobs. And Steve actually tells a story from his childhood, and it goes like this. When he was a young boy, he became very friendly with an elderly gentleman who lived up the street from him. And the gentleman invited him into his garage one day, and he had a bunch of rocks he had picked up from the garden. He had placed the rocks in a rock tumbler, and he asked Steve to come back the following day. And when Steve returned, he saw that the rocks that had tumbled about were now smooth, shiny, and beautiful. And the metaphor he told was one in which was to his team about what collaboration is like. You put a bunch of people that may be a little rough around the edges, and with a little noise and a little friction, something really beautiful and outstanding comes about. So we like to think of this metaphor as one that truly inspires us when we think about how people can collaborate with one another.
And we've also been inspired by Keith Sawyer's work, who published a very well-received, nationally recognized book called Group Genius. And in this book, he dismantled the myth of the lone genius, the creative power of many of the inventions that we all know about being associated maybe just with a single person were in fact the products of some sort of collaborative genius or group genius. Other people have also explored this idea of coming together and joining forces, collaborating and exploring content and process together. One of them that we also look to is Dawn Markova, who wrote about collaborative intelligence. We all know about IQ, the intelligence measure, or even maybe about emotional intelligence, how well we can relate to people and get along with others. But Markova and her colleague wrote about collaboration or conversational intelligence, how to have that skill to be able to think with people who actually think unlike you do.
Just again to remind us of some lone geniuses that are in our culture, but they truly are not, are people like Thomas Edison, Albert Einstein, and Henry Ford. Albert Einstein, thinking about him being a lone genius, really worked very well with a partner of his, and that's how he developed many of his theories. Thomas Edison was really great with assembling people who worked well together and who created fabulous inventions. And the same with Henry Ford. So alone, they really did not develop anything. Together, they really did. And the only lone genius we do have in our culture is Wile E. Coyote. He's the super genius. And we know that with super geniuses like Wile E. Coyote, things don't always work very well when you work alone.
We also look to the business world. Even though we are in the field of education, we look to inspiration and information that is available from other fields. And we were truly inspired by Judith Glazer's work, who talked about changing organizational culture by moving away from the I-centered thinking to the we-centered thinking. So we'd like to share a few more collaborators with you, or portraits of collaboration with you. The Wright brothers, who were the very first to take off and fly in the Carolinas in 1903, were bicycle mechanics, and they worked together. They actually maintained a dialogue journal that they kept together. They beat the big corporations that were also trying to get some flights up in the air.
We also look to the owner of Secretariat, Penny Chenery, and many think of her as being the lone genius who was behind the success of the racehorse who finished the Belmont Stakes in record time by 31 lengths. Now, quite honestly, what Penny did that was so remarkable was she assembled a team that worked with the horse, who, from the horse handler to the jockey to the trainer. And that's what truly made Secretariat the great racehorse he was. Going back to Steve Jobs, again, another one we often think of as a lone genius. Here in this particular photograph, he's seated with the team that came up with really at the time, the revolutionary iPod. And Steve, again, like Penny Chenery, had a talent for selecting people with talent.
As researchers, we're also very much interested in the idea that research should not be conducted in isolation or in silos, but when researchers, colleagues like Maria and I work together, we are more productive in our findings and in our research processes. So we are inspired by the forthcoming book by Ben Schneiderman, who wrote about the new ABCs of research, talking about achieving breakthrough collaborations rather than discovering, investigating, or researching topics in isolation. Our own work is connected to the topic of collaboration, more specifically to teacher collaboration.
We started talking about writing our first book together back in 2007. And from there on, we have been very productive with not only writing about collaboration, but actually collaborating.
Yes, so we have written books for teachers, for administrators, for other researchers. We have published a number of related articles as well. And right now, we're working with a number of local school districts implementing some changes to the way services are provided for our English learners, for our ever-growing population of students who do not speak English as their first language. We also believe that for collaboration among teachers, the most important thing is to move away from isolation. Teachers, just like all employees in an organization, need opportunities to build relationships.
We like to look to the area of education, and we have seen teams of teachers collaborate for the benefit of working with English learners. And they do it not because they're directed to do so, but because they are driven by the idea of doing what's best for English learners, and they know that on their own they may not come up with the solutions that they can together.
In our own work as collaborators, as researchers, as teacher educators, we live by an African proverb which goes like this: if you want to go fast, go alone.
If you want to go far, go together.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to Public Square 2.0. I'm Drew Bogner, president of Molloy College, and I'm here with Dr. Andrea Honigsfeld and Dr. Maria Dove, who've been talking with us about the importance of collaboration. So where I sit, I see collaboration as really being important in unbelievable ways. So if you were going to talk about the skill set that people need to be successful in the world, so people coming through school system, for instance, where does collaboration fall on that?
Collaboration is probably at the center of this all, because already in kindergarten, I have a kindergartner at home. One of the first things a kindergartner learns is sharing is caring. So young children are taught how to not to always think of themselves, but to be able to be part of a group. And another favorite kindergarten saying is, you get what you get and you don't get upset. So some of these things many other kindergarten moms at home also hear that the kids bring home. So starting in kindergarten all the way up to college and beyond the workplace is a very collaborative, cohesive unit where we need to learn to function.
So are we teaching collaboration specifically in schools now? I know you mentioned 4 C's, so the critical thinking and so forth, but are we teaching collaboration?
I think most certainly. You find in classrooms, in K through 12 classrooms, the students are working in collaborative groups. There is a higher level of student engagement in these groups. And so the collaboration itself does promote critical thinking, creativity. I think that even in our college classrooms, we have our students working together on projects. And then you find in companies such as Google, they don't have those traditional little cubicles that they work in. They have very open workspaces, and so there's a lot of sharing going on. So I think that collaboration definitely is a part of millennial culture, and because it is I think part of certain generations more than others, there's sometimes where you see there are issues with collaboration among people.
Well, we'll come back to that, but I've had the opportunity to visit some collaboration spaces in Manhattan. We're actually working to launch a collaboration space with Baldwin School District at an elementary school, Schubert Elementary School, that's not in usage as an elementary school, and a collaboration space for future leaders, future people that are looking to develop ideas that have socially redeeming characteristics. So I've been visiting these spaces in the city that are nonprofits, and when you visit them, they're really interesting because you walk around the space, and if anybody is over 30, you know, they really look good for their age. But, you know, so people are, and in the space, you join it, you have to apply with your idea, and then you can either have access to the common rooms, you can have your own seat at a big table, you can have a desk, or you can have an office, and you pay a certain membership fee for each one. But the whole idea is you come together willing to collaborate on your idea, and you meet and you talk about, you might have an expertise in social media, I might have an expertise in video production, and then we share with each other to develop the ideas. And this is sweeping the country, and it's millennials. So I'm really interested in, is this a generational issue, or is this just really becoming the way in which it's become acceptable to work? Partly because of what's been happening in the school system. Have we educated the people so that this is what you've grown up doing from kindergarten, first grade, second grade, working in groups and collaborating, so it seems very typical to keep doing it? Do you have any sense of it?
It's an interesting question.
It's
What do you think? Do you think
interesting.
we have partially created this interest? Is it partially created because of the way in technology can help you communicate? So why do I see this happening?
Technology must play a very important role in it, because if you think about the digital natives,
Yes.
the students, or the children who grow up with technology in their hands, in their backpacks. Recently, I was reading a book about the last backpack generation going to school with the heavy backpack full of binders and books. Instead, laptops and tablets and computers, even smaller devices, will
Yeah,
replace some
right.
of these traditional instructional materials. So by virtue of going on Google Drive or Google Docs and working together, the next generation of students who are going through our school system now learn to collaborate and use resources that are at their fingertips.
Yeah, that's
So when
my sense.
Yes.
And I think that because the resources are at their fingertips, they see collaboration in a very different way. They can access information in ways that maybe previous generations couldn't. And so they think about, I think, gathering ideas and being able to share ideas. I mean, social media, chat, rooms.
The speed of
yes,
sharing,
yes,
the
is
ability to share is so easy.
amazing.
Yeah. But yet, you pointed this out in your presentation. This is not new, though, either.
No.
No.
So I appreciated what you're talking about with Edison. I've actually been watching this documentary series called How Did We Get to Here?
Yes.
And it's about technology, but it really talks about how an idea is really a network of other ideas. And so,
Yeah.
and so I had been watching about how some of those things happen. So this is not new.
No.
Collaboration really isn't new. Maybe the way in which we do it might be new, but how did we come to this conclusion that you were talking about, that we're an individualistic culture?
Well, it's interesting because that has been the myth in
It's a myth.
America.
Yeah.
That we have this rugged individualism, and we have the individual is so very paramount in our culture. Individual rights, the rights of people. But I think that kind of comes into it doesn't really follow with the way our millennials are collaborative. I think there's a tremendous shift, cultural shift occurring. And so this collective responsibility, I think, is coming in the forefront instead of individual responsibility.
When I think of the shifts happen, and I think education system is a microcosm of our values and what we see as essential knowledge and skills and values. And so I've seen fundamental shifts happen in the education system that I see in the students who come to college. And one of those was when we started teaching multiculturalism and embracing diversity. So the students today, clearly this is factual, that students don't see the differences in race. And in fact, they don't see that as the major issue. They see as a major issue the gap between rich and poor. And the same thing happening with all this group work that's been happening. That idea when I was in school that, I'm kind of old now, right? You do your own work. You might have, in college, you might have done some group projects, but generally, maybe some group projects along the way, but you didn't do that in elementary school. But now, it's vastly different, the way the rooms are arranged and everything. We've set this all up, so this idea, we shouldn't be surprised that we've educated people from kindergarten to work in groups, right?
And also taking from more collective cultures, such as the Japanese, or even when we educate youngsters who are English learners from South America, they come to school already very willing to collaborate, maybe, and having them understanding the nuances, which, what's collaboration, what is, cheating and copying.
Well, that's true too. That's true too. Can we teach collaboration then? Maybe we've already been talking about that. And if so, how do you teach collaboration? Andrea?
Well, there are some prerequisites for collaboration, and one of the most important ones is trust. I have to trust Maria when we stand up in front of an audience and we're finishing each other's sentences, when we write together, when we have a due date, when we travel to a conference around the United States. We have to trust each other and develop a working relationship in which we each carry our own weight, we each contribute, and we come to something greater than what each individual put into this partnership. So I think the best word for it really is partnership building and relationship building, through which we're going to produce something that's greater than the sum of the individual products that we could have produced.
What we often say is you have to leave your ego at the door in order to collaborate well.
I would agree with that. I definitely do.
Now, how is it taught?
Yes,
That's very, very hard. So soft skills have to be taught. Communication skills have to be taught. Time management skills. Respecting each other. How do you show respect, and how can you stay open to divergent ideas when they might not be exactly what you thought originally, yet be able to listen. So going back to communication skills, active listening skills.
Yeah, I agree with that.
In which I'm able to listen to Maria, what she's saying, rather than already formulating my own answers. How am I going to respond to her when she's still talking, which sometimes we might do. When in fact in a collaborative partnership, you truly need to keep an open mind and suspend your eagerness to respond right away, and just take in the ideas and process the ideas together. So it is thinking skills, communication skills, processing skills. These soft skills need to be taught. Collaboration is a sum of all of these.
So we're about out of time, so maybe just one more question. So how can you, if you're a parent, make sure that you start this journey of preparing someone to be collaborative? Thoughts?
Well, the family is the perfect place to do that, because there are multiple members in that family, and sharing and negotiating roles and responsibilities and working towards a common goal is one part of it.
And?
Decision making. Decision making can be done collaboratively instead of authoritatively.
Right.
And that doesn't always work, but sometimes you have to say no. But I think that there can be many decisions that can be made collaboratively, and start that work there.
I know from where I sit, I see this as the future. Collaboration and partnership, it's how we get more done. It's a multiplier effect.
Yes.
So I know we could talk about this for another half hour, and I wish we could, but I'd like to thank you for being on the Public Square 2.0, Andrea and Maria, and I thank our audience for joining us, and I hope to see you again on another edition of the Public Square 2.0. Thanks for joining us.